Hello, it's week 10 of season 5 of the Andy Griffith Show. This week's episode title is Goodbye, Sheriff Taylor. Barney?
I come in the courthouse just as Andy is getting off the phone with a detective in Raleigh setting up the meeting with him. They've offered him a job, and Andy tells me he might take it. And I say, leave me, Derry. Partners all these years, and just like that, I just don't believe this. All the times we spent together, going fishing and double dating, kidding around, I just don't know what's going to happen to law and order around here. And Andy says it's maybe just time for a change for him. And he says if he goes, I might get asked by the city council to be the new sheriff. And I say, well, then you stop to think about it. The whole thing does kind of make sense. I mean, it wouldn't be fair to put this burden on somebody who's green. He'd probably crumble under the strain. Naturally, you'd want to leave the man in charge who knows the score.
And then that night, Opie's asking his dad when they're going to move if his dad takes the job. And Andy says, not until the end of the school semester. And then Aunt Bee starts wondering whether this is a good idea at all to leave. And whether you would be a good replacement. And Andy says you'd do fine.
Yeah, I'm down at the courthouse, draking in 3 temporary deputies, Otis, Gooder, and Jed, for Tuesday, while Andy's in Raleigh. And I say one of them might get chosen to be turning it. And I test their reflexes, and I say, on this job it's important to be fast. There's only 2 kinds of cops, the quick and the dead. And Gooder does well in the test, but Otis doesn't. He doesn't catch the tomato I throw it in. And then I ask a question about traffic directing. And they start talking about something else. And I yell, hold it! Everybody back in line!
And then Andy walks in, and you tell him these are the candidates for the deputy position. And Otis starts telling him about the tomato you threw at him, which is now all over his shirt.
And Andy tells me off to the side that they don't look like good candidates. And I tell him I've got things under control, and he can go on up to Raleigh and not worry. And after he leaves, Opie comes in and tells me about a boy with his head stuck in a storm drain. So I call Public Works, and I say, hello, this is Acting Sheriff Fife speaking. Listen, there's a little boy with his head in one of your sewers on Maple Street. And I tell Opie they'll get him right out.
And then Opie leaves, but he comes back in later saying now that he needs a first aid kit for a boy with a skinned knee down at the school crossing. And then you get a call about some problem with Jed down at Harry's fruit store. And then the mother of the boy with the skinned knee comes in all mad that you didn't do more for him.
And then Opie comes in later and says they still won't have that boy's head out. And then I hear all these cars honking, and I go out and I see the traffic jam caused by Gooder's incompetent traffic directing. And once it all settles down, I tell Floyd I don't think this sheriff job is for me, and I wish Andy would stay on. And then we see Andy get back in town, and he says he had a good trip, and Floyd keeps trying to tell him about the traffic jam, but I say it was nothing. And after Andy goes home, I say, I know how we can keep Andy here. All we have to do is manufacture a little trouble, a crime wave.
So you fabricate all kinds of stuff. Make believe hold up at the filling station, a pack of allegedly wild kids in the middle of the night, and an assault down at Floyd's barbershop.
But Andy says he can see that all this stuff was made up, and that we should stop, because he's decided to stay. So I tell the temporary deputies, well, with the sheriff back in charge, there won't be any need for any deputies. I want to thank all of you for helping out. I really appreciate it. There'll be a little something in the mail for you, a $5 check for each of you.
And then you tell Andy how crazy things got when he was gone. He says that's just when you got to start taking things in stride, Barney. And then there's an accident in front of the courthouse, and Andy goes out, and you wave to him while things get crazy for him, as if to say, just take things in stride, Andy.
And the next day, things are back to normal, and I go out on patrol. But then Otis throws a tomato at me to get me back for what I did to him during his deputy training.
We'll see you next week for episode 11.